With the anticipated release of version 2.5 in just a couple of days, it's definitely expected for there to be quite a lot of players hyped to finally be able to pull the long-awaited Phrolova. As one of the earliest characters to have been revealed in the story and only now just being available to pick up, alongside her incredible looking animations and damage potential as a DPS, pretty much like most characters that have released as of recent, it's almost certain Phrolova will hold a ton of value on release. So to just bring those that are interested in Phrolova up to speed before they go in, I'll be breaking down her full kit alongside whether or not her signature weapon is a must pull, then I'll finish it off with the overall value, and for those that are still a bit unsure if you should summon for Phrolova. Before we do jump into it, and following up from my previous WuWa video, I do have 10 more codes to give to you guys that can provide some astrites alongside a few other things. So to be selected to receive a code, just comment down below your favorite WuWa character or anime to spice this up, and I'll respond asking for your Discord. Also, I will favor those that I can see are subscribed. And just one final thing, if you are perhaps drained from version 2.4's banners and would need some additional Lunites to prepare for version 2.5, then you may want to check out this sponsor. Loot Bar is a safe and reliable top-up platform that allows you to pick up game currency for an even lower price than in-game. Such as in WutheringWaves, you are able to pick up selected items with up to 21% off. So if you are thinking about picking up some Lunite or even just renewing your Lunite subscription, then you may as well pick it up from Loot Bar and save some money. All you need to do is head to the website and click on whichever pack you would like to pick up, then fill out your game account details, choose your preferred payment method, and in a couple of minutes you will receive your Lunites. Also, it's fair to mention that the double top-up bonus will be provided even when going through Loot Bar, so you aren't missing out. Lastly, as of now, new users are eligible for a 10% off coupon along with a bunch of other coupons for an extra discount. So again, if you are looking for a quick and safer way to pick up discounted game currency than other websites, be sure to check out Loot Bar through the link in the description. Now, as our latest Havoc Rectifier DPS, Phrolova will be capable of primarily dealing resonant scale damage and havoc damage through her abilities, whilst also providing some support off-field via dealing damage through controlling Hecate and amplifying the damage dealt from the character switching in. So ultimately, we will have to see when she does release, but it seems like Phrolova will be capable of dealing main DPS levels of damage whilst having very unique sub-DPS capabilities, which would allow her to be quite flexible and to hold a great amount of long-term value. Now, diving into the actual abilities and mechanics, Phrolova will have a simple 3-hit basic attack string that likely won't be capable of dealing much damage, but the full basic attack string will still want to be performed due to basic attack 3 allowing her to enter the reincarnate state. The reincarnate state is one of multiple states Phrolova can enter, and alongside accessing it through basic attacks, the resonant skill in addition will also allow her to enter the reincarnate state alongside dealing havoc damage. Now, whilst in this state, the enhanced basic attack, Movement of Fate and Finality, and the enhanced resonant skill, Murmurs in a Haunting Dream, will be available. Following up with the enhanced basic attack will in fact stagnate the enemy and allow Phrolova to deal damage considered as resonant skill damage before ending the reincarnate state. On the other hand, with the enhanced resonant skill, it wouldn't be able to stagnate enemies like the enhanced basic attack, but it is expected to deal a bit more havoc damage considered as resonant skill damage before ending the reincarnate state. Now, regarding the Forte circuit, the gauge will be able to hold a max of 6 volatile notes, but there will in fact be 3 different types of notes that can be accumulated. The final basic attack and enhanced basic attack would each be able to provide 1 stack of volatile note strings, whereas the resonant skill and enhanced resonant skill will each provide a stack of volatile note winds. Then when activating either the inherent skill, both variations of the intro skill, or an echo skill, Phrolova will obtain 1 stack of volatile note cadenza. The purpose of each volatile note will be that they will allow Hecate to activate specific abilities depending on the notes obtained, with volatile note Cadenza in specific being the most valuable out of the three. Now with that being said, if there are certain notes you may want to stack up for Hecate on the Forte gauge, Phrolova can continue to obtain more volatile notes and will replace the ones you have obtained first, allowing for some flexibility and control over the abilities Hecate will activate. Upon reaching max stacks within the Forte gauge and whilst in the compose state, which would be considered as the base state that can be entered every 25 seconds, the enhanced heavy attack Scarlet Coda will then be available. On activation, the ability will stagnate and pull enemies together whilst dealing havoc damage considered as resonant skill damage, essentially making this a core ability as it does ensure smaller enemies are dealt with quickly and does seem to have incredible area of effect. It's also worth mentioning that not only will the ability send Phrolova into the resolving chord state, but the ability itself will in fact be considered as casting an echo skill, which is going to be related to the signature weapon and some other abilities further into her rotation. Now, in addition to Scarlet Coda already being expected to deal a ton of damage, the damage multiplier is increased by the amount of stacks of aftersound that have been accumulated. The max amount of aftersound stacks that can be held is 24 stacks, and through the first inherent skill, Phrolova will gain 10 stacks of aftersound immediately after entering battle. Alongside that, the inherent skill will increase Phrolova's crit damage by 2.5% per stack of aftersound that has been obtained, which means a total crit damage bonus of 60% can be gained through her very own abilities. However, it doesn't stop there, since when aftersound reaches max stacks, each new stack will increase Phrolova's crit damage by an additional 1% up to 100%. So even though you may not always be able to obtain the full crit damage bonus possible, it's worth knowing that a crit damage bonus of 160% will be achievable if you obtain enough aftersound stacks, which makes this inherent skill ridiculous if you do reach the max bonus, as it certainly will allow Phrolova to deal an immense amount of damage. Now, as for obtaining additional stacks of aftersound aside from gaining 10 via the inherent skill, the enhanced abilities Hecate's Strings, Hecate's Winds, and Hecate's Cadenza will grant 1 stack of aftersound each. But in order to utilize these abilities, Phrolova will first need to activate the Resonant Liberation. Now, unlike pretty much every other character in the game that requires resonance energy to activate their liberation, Phrolova on the other hand will require absolutely zero resonance energy and instead only needs to be within the resolving chord state from activating the Scarlet Coda ability. Upon activating the liberation Waltz of the Forsaken Depths, Phrolova will then enter her final state known as the Maestro state for 24 seconds, and whilst in this state, she will straight up gain a massive 120% attack bonus unconditionally. So with that, paired with the massive crit damage increase from the inherent skill alone, it's pretty obvious to see that Phrolova on paper at least should turn out to be one monstrous DPS. Now, an extremely unique aspect of the liberation is that Phrolova will ascend into the air and commands the Hecate Echo to attack in her place, still dealing solid havoc damage since Hecate and Phrolova will share the same attributes and stats. However, they will also share the same HP bar once Phrolova is the active character, which means despite ascending into the air, she isn't completely safe until you do switch to another character and allow Hecate to attack automatically. Although, with the second inherent skill being able to provide increased resistance to interruption and reduces damage taken by 30%, it will allow Phrolova to tank quite a bit more damage whilst being the active character and controlling Hecate. Now, just to further strengthen the synergy between Phrolova and Cantarella, Hecate's abilities will in fact not remove the target's hazy dream state when dealing damage, which, if you need a reminder, is Cantarella's ability that slows enemies significantly and will be removed upon dealing damage to the enemy. So with Hecate essentially having free reign on enemies that are slowed down enough to not have to worry about avoiding attacks, either when controlling Hecate or when using another character on the team, team, Hekate's attacks essentially wouldn't be seen as an inconvenience to think about and would only further the synergy between Cantarella and Phrolova. Also, it's worth going over the fact Hekate's abilities in specific are capable of quite a bit, since in exchange for the volatile nodes Phrolova has obtained, Hekate will be able to activate various abilities that can stagnate and pull enemies together whilst dealing damage, alongside accumulating stacks of Aftersound as I mentioned earlier to allow for the Scarlet Coda ability to deal even more damage. On top of that, a unique ability Hekate is capable of would be following up with an attack whenever an ally activates their Echo skill, which would be another instance of damage that could be capable of dealing solid DPS that can be triggered once Phrolova is off field. So Hekate's abilities do look great as there are multiple capable of crowd controlling enemies and dealing solid damage. However, it would be important to focus on the fact that Hekate's abilities mainly deal damage considered as Echo skill damage, which is slightly unfortunate since it would mean there will be more reliance upon obtaining the signature weapon to enhance the amount of Echo skill damage dealt. Finally, as for the second liberation, the Curtain Call, Phrolova would be able to activate it either when the Maestro state ends after 24 seconds, or when switching to Phrolova without the intro skill and during the Maestro state, or when she is in the Resolving Chord state and holding down the Liberation button, which is pretty unique as that would mean the first Liberation and Maestro state is completely skipped. Then lastly, simply pressing down the Liberation button whilst in the Maestro state would be able to activate Curtain Call. Upon successfully activating Curtain Call, the ability will stagnate enemies to ensure they do receive the full impact from the burst of havoc damage, alongside removing all volatile nodes and ends the Resolving Chord state. Now as for the intro skill in specific, there will as mentioned be two intro skills that can be activated depending on whether Phrolova has entered the Maestro state. Of course, with the Suite of Immortality being considered as the enhanced intro skill, it will be capable of dealing more damage since it does deal damage considered as resonant skill damage, but it would also be able to stagnate the enemy as Phrolova enters the field. So there would be a lot of value behind the enhanced intro skill and enough for you to intend to always activate it, which shouldn't be too difficult as it does replace the standard intro skill once the Maestro state does come to an end. Then finally, as for the outro skill, the incoming Resonator receives a 20% havoc damage amplification and a 25% heavy attack damage amplification. So this would essentially solidify Phrolova to be one hell of a main DPS with sub DPS capabilities, given way into the future when Phrolova may not be able to deal as much damage to keep up with other meta damage dealers. At the very least, she will remain relevant simply by amplifying the damage of other DPS characters. Now just before we do conclude with Phrolova's overall value, the signature weapon in specific as expected will be incredible as it is pretty much designed for her. The main stat will provide a crit rate bonus of 24.3%, and as for the passive, the usual 12% attack bonus is provided alongside when dealing echo skill damage, a 32% resonant skill damage bonus is provided alongside a 32% echo skill damage amplification. To top it off, the weapon will allow Phrolova to ignore 8% of the target's defense when simply dealing damage. So overall, even though the crit rate bonus is in fact lower than pretty much every other crit rate rectifier, the passive effects are quite insane and hold incredible value, especially since it does provide a 32% echo skill damage amplification rather than a damage bonus, which would allow the Hekate Echo to deal a lot more damage when on field. So with the fact the signature weapon essentially does provide a solid damage boost for Phrolova's entire kit, it would of course make this weapon completely worth it, and even more so if you do intend to utilize Phrolova long term. On the other hand, due to the weapon being a bit restrictive since no one else currently is able to deal echo skill damage, the most you would then be able to obtain from this weapon on other characters would be the main stat bonus, the 12% attack bonus, and the 8% defense shred. So in terms of flexibility to be utilized amongst other characters, it wouldn't exactly be the best. But that is something we are all too familiar with at this point, and you should still pick it up if you do again intend to use Phrolova long term. Although, if you aren't able to, there are some alternatives such as the String Master, Whispers of Sirens, and Rhyme Drape Sprouts that can be utilized to an extent. The String Master in specific would provide the most value due to its easily accessible passive, whilst the others wouldn't be utilized as much but would still be solid options due to the main stats and bits of the passives being utilized. So as usual with most DPS characters, the signature weapon is going to be a great addition and allow for much more damage to be dealt. It wouldn't be a must for the character to function, but for the sake of quality of life in utilizing the character, if you can afford it, the signature weapon would definitely be worth considering for your account. Overall, as expected from a character that has been hyped ever since even before the official release of WutheringWaves, Phrolova on paper seems to be an incredible DPS with unique capabilities in her kit that allow her to really stand out, whilst also being able to support many different characters that can either deal havoc damage or heavy attack damage now and in the future. The fact that she does synergize incredibly well with Cantarella and allows her to slot into the support slot for the mono havoc composition, whilst being able to support another havoc DPS such as Roccia that switches in after, would allow Phrolova to simply be insane for havoc. So with that being the case, for anyone that already has havoc characters on their account such as Cantarella or Roccia or even Camellia, Phrolova would be a fantastic character that will synergize quite well with those characters whilst dealing top tier damage. In addition, if you may even simply need a new damage dealer to play with or to clear difficult content, you couldn't go wrong with Phrolova, and especially since, as I mentioned, when the time comes that her damage isn't really it anymore, the fact that she can still amplify the damage of various characters will allow her to retain some value for the future. Although, if you don't need a new DPS and may want to skip Phrolova, that would be perfectly fine, and you can definitely wait for another top tier DPS that likely will be dropping within the upcoming version updates. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe for more WutheringWaves content, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. Also, drop a comment down below on whether you will be pulling for Phrolova alone or with a signature weapon, or will you be skipping? And yeah, hope to catch you guys later.